Welcome back to the Crypto World channel, everyone. My name is Josh, and right now, Bitcoin is still forming this huge falling wedge pattern, which is a bullish pattern, and we're just about to begin our next major move. On top of that, we've also seen an increase in funding rates since yesterday, but we've got huge Bitcoin news today because Bitcoin and Ethereum exchange traded funds have officially gotten the green light to be launched in Australia. I'll be covering all of that and more later in the video, so be sure to watch all the way to the end so that you're not missing out on any of this important information. And just before we jump into it, make sure to drop a like on the video down below. And if you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe with notifications turned on for more updates just like this every single day. But with all of that out of the way, let's get straight to what this video is about. So right here, we're on the Bitcoin US dollar chart on the 4-hour time frame, and what we can straight away see is clearly we're still forming this huge falling wedge pattern on the 4-hour chart, and we've now officially seen 3 confirmed touch points along the line of support. And now since yesterday, we've finally seen a 3rd touch point along the line of resistance, which is what we're looking for. I commonly say on the channel that I'd like to look at 3 touch points along a specific line to really confirm that as a significant line on the chart. So this is really good to see for Bitcoin so far. And for the beginners out there, this is technically a bullish pattern, which basically means it's more likely to break out to the upside than it is to break to the downside, but it's still not impossible for it to break to the downside. I want to make that clear. And the level to break above for Bitcoin is coming in at approximately $61,500 US dollars. But I mentioned yesterday, I'd like to see a break above around 62K. And if Bitcoin can do that with confirmation, so either a spike or surge in volume as we're breaking out to the upside here, or a strong candle close above resistance. So for example, a few 4-hour candle closes or even a daily candle close above the 62K level can also act as confirmation. And another method of confirmation that we could use is a potential retest of the previous line of resistance to flip it into support. If we could see something like that, obviously that would be extra confirmation, but we don't need to see all 3 of those confirmation methods to actually confirm a breakout. Really, one can be enough, but obviously the more the better. And yeah, as I mentioned yesterday, if we can see a break above resistance with confirmation, then I would expect the price target to come into play, which is basically the all-time high for Bitcoin, coming in at around $67,000 US dollars per Bitcoin. So from the point of the breakout to that price target towards the all-time high, that is around a 9% gain for the Bitcoin price. And on top of that, within this falling wedge pattern, we do have a bit of a W pattern forming, as you can see. But for the W pattern to really confirm and play out to the upside, we need to first see obviously a break above this point of resistance, the falling wedge resistance line. And we also need to break above this exact line right here, because that is basically the neckline for the W pattern. And that is coming in at pretty much exactly $63,700 US dollars per Bitcoin. So I would expect perhaps a little bit of resistance at that point as well, considering the fact that we have seen 2 points of resistance along that exact line. So those are really the main levels that I'm paying attention to in the short term for potential resistance before we can test up towards the all-time high after we get above those levels. And if we get any major rejection, well, first of all, if we get a rejection below 62K, then it is still possible for Bitcoin to come back down towards just under 60,000, towards around 58,000. And that's actually what happened since yesterday with that quick wick to the downside. We actually got a small rejection from this line of resistance, the falling wedge line of resistance, and the Bitcoin price basically came down to this exact line of support and then got a perfect bounce and came straight back up to this resistance point. But if we see a breakout here and end up seeing a rejection from that 63.7K level or somewhere around there, then in that case, I'd expect perhaps a small retracement back down towards this previous line of resistance, the falling wedge resistance, which would then be acting as support. Taking a look in the price oscillators. So the RSI, first of all, is also forming that huge W pattern on the 4-hour chart, and the MACD is seeing the exact same thing. And we've just seen a small bullish cross in the 4-hour MACD. All we're waiting on now is a break above some of these important points of resistance so that we can finally set up the next leg to the upside, because as of right now, in the shorter term, technically speaking, if you're looking at the lower highs and lower lows, Bitcoin just in the immediate short term is still inside this short-term cool-off until we can finally break these points of resistance. Only at that point, that is when we can finally look towards a recovery. But with that being said, if you're simply zooming out on the larger timeframes, like the daily chart, for example, I am extremely bullish on Bitcoin. Just simply look at the trends that we are in. Even if Bitcoin had more of a pullback in the shorter term, I would still be remaining very bullish on the larger trend for Bitcoin. Because for example, if you're looking at what we did back in September, we had around a 25% pullback in the Bitcoin price over around 2 to 3 weeks. But even after that pullback, we still remained bullish on the big picture. When Bitcoin is in a longer term uptrend like what we're in right now, as a part of my Bitcoin strategy, I simply use these short term pullbacks as buying opportunities, considering the fact that I'm getting in at cheaper prices in the middle of an uptrend. It seems pretty simple talking about buying the dip in the middle of an uptrend, but for some reason, there's a lot of people that panic and think that we're going into a bear market the moment moment we see a tiny little pullback in the Bitcoin price. But like I said, I simply use those opportunities to accumulate more Bitcoin before we continue higher later on, considering that we still haven't broken this uptrend. And speaking about the longer term trend for Bitcoin, we're still playing out the price target for this huge cup and handle pattern that's on the daily time frame. I let you guys know about this pattern right back here, just as we were seeing the breakout above the neckline. That was back when Bitcoin was at around 50,000 US dollars, basically saying that I was very bullish on Bitcoin at that stage. And I was letting you guys know right back then when Bitcoin was at 50K that the technical price target is up towards around 78 to 79,000 US dollars, so nearly $80,000 per Bitcoin. And back when the price was at 50,000, there was a lot of people in the comment section saying a price target towards 70,000 is crazy. But now that Bitcoin put in a new all-time high, 67,000 only about a week ago, price targets towards that $70,000 price range and towards 80,000 become a lot more realistic when you think about it. And so above the all-time high, that is one of my first major price targets, just underneath 80,000 US dollars. Now, just quickly talking about the Bitcoin funding rates, giving you guys a follow-up update from what I said yesterday. Today, the Bitcoin funding rates have seen a slight increase since where they were yesterday, which means traders are starting to dive into long positions again, but right now the funding rates are only just above their neutral values. So basically, they're not overly positive yet, which is a good sign. This means that we've still got quite a lot of room to the upside. Now getting into some huge Bitcoin news today, because today is the day that ASIC has officially given the green light for Bitcoin and Ethereum ETFs to be traded on the Australian Stock Exchange. And by the way, ASIC is the Australian Securities and Investment Commission. It's basically like Australia's version of the SEC for the American viewers out there. So this is big news, especially if this turns out to be a spot Bitcoin ETF. If it turns out to be another Bitcoin futures ETF, then this isn't as big of a deal as if it turns out to be a spot Bitcoin ETF. I explained the difference between a futures ETF and a spot ETF in more detail when the first Bitcoin futures ETF got launched in the US just a while ago, but I'll really quickly explain it for the new viewers out there. Basically, a Bitcoin futures ETF is backed by futures contracts, which are a form of derivative, which are not actually Bitcoin. They're basically pieces of paper that hold a similar value as Bitcoin, also known as paper Bitcoin. And then a Bitcoin spot ETF is backed up by actual Bitcoin, meaning that the funds that is running the ETF, if it's running a spot ETF, they have to go up and buy a whole bunch of Bitcoin so that they can physically back that ETF with Bitcoin, rather than printing a whole bunch of paper derivative contracts, which in that case, in the case of a futures ETF, doesn't really put that much new demand on Bitcoin because no actual Bitcoin is needed to be bought to run a Bitcoin futures ETF necessarily. So that is just a quick and simple explanation between a spot ETF and a futures ETF, and that is why that a spot ETF is a huge deal for us, but a futures ETF isn't really that big of a deal. So I'll definitely be very interested to see where this goes now, because this is basically just ASIC giving the green light for a Bitcoin and also Ethereum ETFs to officially trade within Australia. And so now we're just waiting on an ETF actually getting launched. And don't forget, if you want to get these real-time updates throughout the day in the crypto markets, definitely make sure you follow me over on my Twitter. My official Twitter is linked in the description down below for those of you that want to stay up to date at all times in these markets. And if you enjoyed this video or got something valuable out of it, be sure to leave a like down below. And if you're new to the channel, you might as well subscribe with notifications turned on for more updates just like this every single day. I honestly do appreciate all of your support in the channel at the moment. I can't thank you guys enough. And just before you click off, for the new viewers on the channel, make sure you're checking out one of these uploads if you haven't already. In the bottom left of your screen, I've got a passive income video showing you how I earn passive income every day in the crypto markets. And in the top left of your screen, I've got a trading tutorial video showing you how to trade Bitcoin. But anyway, that is really everything I have to say for this video. I hope you all enjoyed it, and I'll see you all in the next video.